Mr. Ghosh, when did you decide in your journey that you want to become a bank, from a microfinance company to a bank? And was it just this one big audacious goal that you set for yourself to say, listen, I'm going to go out there, write with the big boys, and put in my hat in the ring and apply for a banking license? Or was that something which was a little more thought through? How did this all happen?
So, thank you. I am not talking about this is my target or would like to make a bank. So my point was, is there how I can fulfill the demand of the bottom of the pyramid people as a banking service, or we say that the financial service, not the banking service of that. So as a microcredit organization, we are only provide the credit services to them. And I feel that the day by day, they are demanded is in coming to the diversified, they are asking the savings demand, they are asking that the insurance demand and remittance demand. But because we are the non-banking finance company, so we are not able to give on that. And that time I have been talked with the Reserve Bank of India in the senior level also, and the Ministry of Finance. And so all the bankers also, all the people say that if you like to provide financial services like as a financial inclusion and also is in savings services, so RBI will be not permitted to any NBFC to take the deposit from the people. It is better on that if you can apply for a bank license and then you can be eligible to that. So for that reason, I applied for a bank license to provide the savings service to the customer level. Those are cheated by the unregulated organization. So in that sense, I have become this position. I'm not to say that it is a bank. I like to make a bank. I like to provide the service to the people who need the small ticket size of the service. Then it has come in the bank.
Much more needs to be done in this area.
Right. I'll come to you now, Mr. Kotak. As we were talking about entrepreneurship and banking, you share, that in common with Mr. Ghosh. But of course, your journeys and how you got to your banks have been very different. So can you share a little about your own experience on starting out, and what was it starting out then? And
I think first of all, I've got to congratulate Tamal for writing wonderful stories about banks. So probably the reason why I was called today is because his first book was about a bank of 1994. His second book is about a bank in 2030. So maybe he felt a little guilty and called me because there was a bank in 2003 as well. So Tamal, thank you very much. Talking about Bandhan and my friend Mr. Ghosh, it's like an entrepreneur spots another entrepreneur. So I had the privilege of knowing Mr. Ghosh well before he became a bank, and we as a bank in those days were very, very fortunate for many years to be dealing with Bandhan as a customer and a relationship which we built over time. So about a year and a half, and I'm sharing something in the presence of two regulators, about a year and a half before he got his license, and I don't think he had applied even then, I was in Calcutta calling on customers, something which I'm very fond of, to go out and meet customers across the country. So in Calcutta, I met Mr. Ghosh and his colleagues, he was, by that time, he was doing very well, but excited about the opportunity because the announcement of the guidelines had happened. And he said that, listen, we are moving forward to applying for a bank. And based on what we knew about him, and I can promise you, because I have to do it in the presence of two regulators, there was no inside information of any nature. I said, Mr. Ghosh, I would think you've got a very high probability of getting a license. And if you do get a license, please remember me. So today when a book on him is written, he has remembered me as well, and I'm thankful for that. But I do believe that Bandhan is a unique and a phenomenal story of success. And I agree with Tamal when he says that Mr. Ghosh and Bandhan is a story about a company which does well by doing good. So that's an ideal situation, and I do believe that, that it has a lot of legs. We had the privilege of raising some capital for him before he became a bank as well. But I do believe that this is the whole new journey about Indian financial intermediation. As they say, let many flowers bloom, and I must compliment the policymakers and regulators for letting many flowers bloom and seeing the whole wide scope of Indian entrepreneurship. And I, as a person in this area, I must say that I am grateful to the system for allowing me this opportunity to grow in this system. And I do believe that over the last 40 years, since 1985-86 when I started, one of the great things about India is in the financial sector, there has been reform and progress. And I'm truly a product of Indian financial sector reform, and I would want to acknowledge it today. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ghosh, you mentioned in your opening statements that you saw people getting cheated because of the kind of interest rates they were paying. And so when you started lending to them, how did you decide what was the appropriate rate? Why 25%? Why not 50%? Why not 60%? Even at that rate, they were still getting a pretty good deal compared to the local money lender. So can we say that there's some element of, if we can call it an arbitrage, but with a arbitrage with a conscience that you were practicing?
Thank you. Cheated, I use the word for deposit part on that. No, some of the organizations who are not regulated by Reserve Bank of India, but they are collecting the deposit from the people. And after that, you know that scenario on that. But coming to the interest rate depend on cost of fund and operational of the credit service on that. So in that sense, as a Bandhan, we started on that way. What is the cost of fund? Cost of fund depend on how much I pay to the bank for borrow the money. And you know that it is not the at par of the deposit cost on that. It is beyond that. So this is one thing on that. And second is they are coming on that operational cost. So microcredit, this is one that is in product. That the product isn't always the credit provider, that is a microcredit organization. They are giving the doorstep service. They are going to the borrower's house, assess them, disburse the borrower's house, and collect every week from the borrower's house. So that there is a cost of transaction is high. And this cost of transaction, if it is beared by borrower, so then it will become down of the interest rate. But because of the microcredit organization, these people are not spend their time to come to the bank branch or microcredit organization office to pay their installment on that, so that they are very happy if the bank or microfinance organization will be delivered their service to the doorsteps and collect the money from the doorsteps. So this is an operational cost. So this is a cost of fund and operational cost together, and a part of this risk. You know that there is all loan of microcredit is an unsecured. So unsecured loan always is in provision is higher. So all together it has depend on that. This is the one side. So first if you say that the 25, so when it will be scale up, automatically cost will come down. And we are gradually like to reduce on that. So if you say that the beginning of that is maybe in the 30%, then it is come to the 22, 20, now is at 20.5. No, in that way, and there is no processing fee, only the interest rate. So in that way, we are the pricing the product, no, according to their cost of fund. If you say that now cost of fund has come down because of the deposit has come. So deposit plus again one cost added on that, this is an SLR CRR that is called added. The before it was not there. So in that sense is in one side, and the other side is in cost has been increased because IT cost have been increased as a bank. So down the line it will be come down, And automatically it will be also slashing the interest rate to the customer level. So bank, because we have become a bank, the ultimate benefit will go to this level of the customer, and they will get the lower interest rate compared to the microfinance. So this is the way on that.
Right. Tamal, all the three books, including Bandhan that you've written, have some similarities and yet are very diverse. So all three of them are on major organizations. They all have very powerful, if you will, protagonists. So whether it was Bank for the Buck on HDFC or Sahara or now Bandhan.
That was the most powerful.
Yeah. And I guess writing Sahara would have really tested your investigative abilities as a journalist, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how your own journey as a journalist and as an author has evolved between your first book and this one.
I mean, it's a journalistic work, it's not a creative work, right? So it's a sort of extension of what I do. So it's a 1,000-word column. I have to make it 70,000 word to make it a book. So that's how I think about it. But the challenge was in Bandhan. There's a different kind of course. These are challenges are different. Like HDFC was my debut, so I was new as an author. I was just testing water and trying to find out how to make it interesting, so on and so forth. And my single point agenda has always remains that to make it interesting, let's not get into too many jargons and too many technicalities, because if you write a book on a bank or a financial intermediary, only bankers read it and say good things about you, you are a complete failure. It has to be read by non-bankers, other professionals, and they must understand. So you can't take the cover of SLR and CRR and CAR to hide your ignorance. So you have to make it very intelligible to the masses. That's my single point agenda when I write news reports or column or a book. So first book, debut, so that's the challenge was that how to 1,000 words I can make it 70,000 words. Subrata Roy Sahara was a different kind of challenge because that was a quote unquote investigative story. I could not say anything because one has to read between the lines. Despite that, I was slapped with a 200 crore case. I had to fight it in High Court, and there could be a book on the fight. So that's a very it's a very different kind of thing. I can't talk about that in the public forum. What I have undergone at that point of time. Here is a different kind of challenge. I am somewhat an insider. So always people might think that it's a plug for Bandhan. It is, and let this openly, I am telling you this, when Mr. Ghosh asked me to join him as an advisor on strategy, I had no idea about writing this book. I just thought I have enough for journalism. I have been writing on banks, so let me see how a bank is born. Out of curiosity, I started working with him, leaving my Mumbai so-called comfort zone, going to Kolkata after many decades and be there and all. And I never thought that I would write a book. Keeping diary is my habit, so I used to keep diaries, etc., etc. And I completely stayed away from writing on Bandhan because clearly there's a conflict of interest. I can't use my newspaper where I'm a consulting editor in the form of a columnist to pump for Bandhan. So I did not write, but 23rd August when this bank was born, I thought as a journalist I must tell the world that India gets a new bank. That was the column I wrote. And that column got some more than 500,000 hit on internet. So that's how I got the idea that there is enormous amount of curiosity about Bandhan. And when I spoke to Penguin, I had an arrangement with Penguin, agreement with Penguin long back that I would write a book for them, but without specifying the subject. So when I told Penguin that, look, I thought Bandhan could be a subject, Penguin said, yes, fine, go ahead. So that's how it was born. So all along, I was extremely cautious that I should not do anything which can be interpreted as if I am, selling a Bandhan story. So that's why I asked people, whether it's former CAG Vinod Rai, or Mr. Malegam, or Mr. Sinha, or former RBI Governor, Mr. Subbarao, Deepak Parekh, that please go through the book, read it, and do you think it is the right thing? Then only I'll go ahead. All of them said, yes, it's an interesting story. I approached Professor Kaushik Basu, former CA and now World Bank chief economist, again with the same thing. Basu said, look, but you are with Bandhan. I said, you have the right to refuse. If you don't find it, if you think that I have done something which I should not have done, you reject, don't write it. That's it. He said, but then you are running the risk. There is not of time. I said, yes, I am taking the risk. So he took it. He sat on it for weeks. Then one fine morning, he sent me a note. He said, I am pretty excited. You have done a right kind of job. It's journalistic work, and you read the forward, then you'll know. So I am happy to write it. When is the deadline? Deadline was very close by. I gave him 7 days. He did not actually wait for 7 days. By third or fourth day, he sent it back. So if you ask me in the journey, the challenges were different. For HDFC, that was the debut. You are just going on a pitch. You don't know the pitch. You want to bat, and whether you get a 0 or score a century, you do not know. For Sahara, you always ran the risk of being sued, which ultimately happened. And finally, for this, the challenge was different. I am somewhat an insider. How do I keep the Chinese wall? And how do I defend my own objectivity? How do I remain dispassionate? That was the key challenge. So I am passionate about microfinance and finance, and what Mr. Ghosh has done is work. But while writing, I had to keep that in my mind, that Lakshman Rekha.
So, Tamal, starting from Bank for the Buck, now you become almost like the chronicler of choice for entrepreneurs in banking and financial services in India. Am I correct?
I can't say that. I mean, how do I say that here? I'm always looking for.
No, I mean, no other person has been sued for 200 crores for the book in India. So you earned your stripes there, right? With your second book.
I don't know. I mean, that's others to tell. I can't comment on that.
A question for you, Mr. Mundra. A certain level of, if I can say, unbridled, behavior and thinking goes hand in hand with early stages of entrepreneurship efforts. And now we are going to see a large number of payment banks, small banks opening up in the country. As a regulator, how do you see entrepreneurs and consumers both prospering whilst maintaining this entrepreneurial zeal in a, of course, very tightly regulated sector?
I think you have provided a clue to reply in your question itself. When you say very tightly regulated sector, it automatically means that when we, I should not say release or unleash the so-called entrepreneurs in the financial field, they are not greenhorns, neither they are out to experiment, nor we are there to allow them to experiment. If you see the qualifying requirement which is required, many of them will be institutional players. They would be required to have the experience in the world of finance. Care would also be taken that they don't have the linkages which won't find the regulatory comfort. So they come after all those, number one, the very preliminary requirement. And with all that, it's a big country and we have a lot of zeal available. So even with all those pre-qualification barriers, we get a large number. It's not a small number which we receive. And then they are put to further grinding. And finally, those who qualify. So I think there can be a reasonable assurance that number one, there won't be any room for adventurism as such. Sometime while doing that, some of them may be having the undue optimism, as we have seen in the recent episode. But I think they also get wise well within time, and before they move in the direction, some of them decide to do a course correction, which few people have done in the recent licensing exercise, as you must have seen. So I think those fears are not there. Yes, it will be very important that the going forward, particularly in the formative stages, it will be very important to keep an eye on the institution so that they move in the right direction. And the whole purpose of enlarging the canvas with bringing the differentiated banking, etc., is the same, that the consumer should get the best bargain and the best deal.
Right. Mr. Sinha, we earlier spoke about opportunities for rural entrepreneurs or even SMEs, MSMEs to raise capital. What about the other side? As there are efforts being made to provide increased credit, how do you think that section of society can participate in the India growth story with access to smaller investment products? The proliferation of mutual funds, etc., to that section of society.
The question of raising unauthorized money in this country, unauthorized deposits in the country has become a major issue, especially in the last 5-6 years. And I'm surprised and amused that how this particular story, which starts from West Bengal is also the place where we see mushrooming of these unauthorized money collection schemes. And it should be a matter of serious study that what is it that the ground provides for such activities to come through. One can argue that more bank or more banking services could be helpful, but I think the story needs to be gone into much deeper. It's not only a question of providing the bank branches in those areas. How a large number of people are lured into these products, and there is no system, at least till quite early when it assumes a large dimension, is something all of us have been struggling with. SEBI can take credit that SEBI has been able to take action in 250 cases. We have taken action, for example, in large cases. In one case, the amount involved is more than 50,000 crores. And it took almost 10 or 12 years for the amount to go up. But the basic question remains that both in terms of credit and also in terms of providing savings and investment opportunities, India is a breeding ground for unscrupulous people to take advantage of that situation. What is the right strategy to tackle it? I'm personally not very sure that I can give you one strategy, but I think government and all the regulators and all the service providers, the financial service providers, have to work together towards it. Any commodity which is sparse, any commodity which is in short supply, there will be a price, there will be a premium. More so, if it is concentrated in the hands of a few people, it becomes even more problematic. And finance, from that point of view, becomes a very powerful tool. And perhaps in the eastern part, entire eastern part of India, this has been one of the primary causes that the economic activities, the job opportunities, the growth, which has not been there in a very egalitarian way or disbursed way. So it is providing an opportunity for certain class of people to take advantage. I really don't know what is the immediate solution to it, except that all of us have to be alert and all of us have to take action together.
Right. I think we've just got time for maybe one or two more questions. Mr. Kotak, you kind of sidestepped my question when we were talking about your own journey as an entrepreneur when you set up your bank. So just 2 minutes on that.
No, I think first point which I must say with reference to anybody setting up a banking company is that if you make a business plan before you set up a bank, you'll always find it unviable. At least that's what we found when we set up. We actually had a business plan before the banking business, and it looked like the current NBFC model is looking much better than the banking model, because in the initial stages, your front-end costs are just enormous. Finally, the journey to become a bank was a effective call that the banking platform is far more customer-centric as distinct from product centricity, which is what a NBFC platform gets. Therefore, it was a call beyond a business plan, which made us get into banking. And the other interesting thing we found is in the first 5 years, which is from period from 2003 to 2008, it was a big struggle. Therefore, every year, the cost of setting up branches, technology and everything we found actually our profits being more and more under pressure. But thank God, the markets were valuing us even more and more. Therefore, P&L was under pressure, market values were going up, and we were fortunate to raise capital, but it was a very big struggle for the first 5 years. Fortunately, again for us, in those first 5 years, some of our other businesses in the group, like capital markets businesses, investment banking, securities, and others, were doing extremely well. So that gave us the cash to be supporting the banking business model. And then came 2008, and you saw the global financial crisis, and a lot of the capital markets businesses and other businesses went down in the reverse direction. And that's the time when we really recognized the value of the banking platform, because we had spent the money, and post 2008-9, the journey actually became positive. And I can say that the branch banking business is one of the most, or even the consumer banking side, particularly the liability side, is the most difficult part of the banking business. And it has taken us more than 12 to 14 years, if we look at on a completely independent basis, the pure retail liability model for breaking even. Therefore, the pure consumers, not the asset side, the liability side, if you did a true pricing, 12 to 14 years is the period it takes to really become positive on the liability side. And there are a lot of issues. It's the fixed costs, it's the technology costs, it's the CRR, SLR, everything, Mr. Ghosh. And that is the toughest piece of the banking model. We are now beginning to see green light on that. But remember, we are 13 years as a bank. So as you go through this journey, my point is the most challenging part will be the liability side of your balance sheet in this entire journey. And keep your horses and keep on raising capital. That's my advice to you, and ahead of your need. So do that, and markets are very benign, and I can see many capital markets players here who have come here to give you capital. So please take it while the going is good. Thank you.
This almost turned into an entrepreneurship masterclass 101, right? From one great entrepreneur to another. Mr. Ghosh, very quickly, so where do you see your journey ahead?
No, you see that the last 9 months when we started the bank. So before starting the bank, we are the credit organization. So when we become a bank, so we have the one target is there, how we can get the deposit on that. And that one confidence has come to the bank side on that. The 9 months, that is in 14,000 crores deposit has come to the bank. So that means showing on that with a 22% CASA, which is banking industry is very on that. So that means showing on that the huge money in the market. So if I can be design the product and reach it to the people, so that is not the big issue on that. So second point is there, if you say the future, so how we can be reach the more people, those are unbanked. So it is, of course, it is a cost, is more little bit on that, but there's a big space is there. So until I am not scaling it, my cost will be not come down. So that is the one challenge on that, how future I will be liked on that. So another point I say that the lot of challenge in the banking industry, Uday also said on that, I'm not saying in that way, but first one point I say that when I decided on that how many branch I will be open in day one, I decided 700 branches I open in a one day, but nobody agreed with me. And all people have been pulled me in a back. So no, it is not possible. Isn't any new bank is in 5, maximum 10 branches. So until I'll not also, if you say that the 501 branch we have been open in a one day, and within a 9 months now has come to the 670 branches. So anytime I can be reaching the 1,000 branches, because people are very happy to come to get the service in a bank branch compared to the other electronic category on that. Because till now people are not trusted much more on the digital and others. So 80% people always feel that, so where is my money? Is the branch is there? If I open the more branch on that in a small size on that, So that can be reached to the more people, and we can get the any amount of growth in the bank. So my target is there how I can reach to the many people, not the balance sheet side. There's a number of customer size on that, which can be help to the country for financial inclusion on that.
Right. We are going to launch the book in another 2 minutes, but Tamal, not many of you know, but Tamal's actually a English literature graduate, right? And postgraduate in English literature. So from English literature to, banking and finance and understanding the plumbing, understanding everything, and now sort of becoming the guru in the journalism space on banking and finance. How has this happened?
Is it a crime or something? Everybody I know. The other day, one B school asked me to have a lecture on this. I find it's pretty funny. I mean, I don't find it very, praising to me. You are actually...
I mean it in zest only. I'm not praising you about it.
I'm just saying you are actually undermining the intellect of a common person. I mean, it's all about curiosity and common sense. And if you need 10 fingers because you have to put on, computer, otherwise you have 5 fingers to hold a pen. And if you have curiosity, that's it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to study something. You can study while on the job also, no? So at the end of the day, you have to figure out how do you approach things. If you approach that you are an expert, then you are in trouble. But if you approach things as a student, then everything is fine, because I can knock at anybody's door, many of them sitting here. I ask all sorts of stupid questions to make myself understand. And I follow, that's it. So so it's an approach of a student which does not necessarily have to be confined to schools and colleges, even on the job. So I am not very sure whether what you have formally studied in school and college have anything to do with you do in future. If you approach things as a student, continue to approach, you can do. I could have been an architect or even, I don't know, a lawyer, something else. Not a scientist, because that's completely out of the thing. But anything allied or liberal arts, anything could have done. So I don't give any great importance to that. You also should not.
But I think all the bankers here are genuinely happy that you chose to make that decision, not to continue in the literary field and move on to banking and finance.
I just want to add one thing. Tamal rightly, I mean, you described Tamal as a expert in, English literature and in banking, and Tamal's answer was that it's about common sense. I wish most of us bankers also followed his advice and used common sense in our business as well.
So should we stop recruiting from business schools and go to liberal arts colleges now in banking and finance recruitment? Yeah. So can we have the books now? We'd like to formally launch the book, and then we'll proceed with remarks from our two distinguished panelists, Mr. Mundra and Mr. Sinha. Please.
Oh my God, it's so tight.
Thank you. Thank you. You can come to your seat.
Sit.
Shri Sinha ji, Chairman SEBI, all the eminent fellow panelists, distinguished audience, members from the media, of course, author of the book, Shri Tamal, and a larger subject of the book, Shri Ghosh, ladies and gentlemen. I consider it to be my privilege to be a part of launch of this book, though I still couldn't find a convincing answer from Tamal that what makes me eligible for doing so. Recently, the copy was handed over to me, and I was traveling for 2-3 days, and I think that gave me an opportunity to go through the book completely. Even otherwise, it is so fascinating a story that once you pick up the book, it's very difficult to put it aside without completing it. Having read the book, I was just thinking that any book which is developing on the institution or characters, whether these are the books about the individuals or their story. And if I take it to the say a larger canvas, if we are talking about Ramayana or Mahabharata, are we only talking about the Ram or Krishna as the character? I would think all these books are about the individuals, about the institutions, about the societies, about the value system, contemporary canvas. These books are like that. So I think I would say Bandhan, Making of a Bank, is something similar. It's not only a book about Mr. Ghosh, is not only a book about Bandhan as a bank, is also a story of microfinance evolution in the country, the leadership, how the institutions are built, how the value system operates. I think is a bit of all those things. I was just, I would say very refreshingly and rightfully, is not an overtly devotional book to the subject of the book. And in his unique style, the author has taken pause at very appropriate times in the book to probably hinting at the need to have a critical review on the personalities, on the operating system in view of the changing development in the economy and in the size of the bank itself. I was just musing because a couple of books which I mentioned, their authors had a very interesting history, a great transformation. Like Valmiki, before he wrote Ramayana, he was a dacoit. Kalidas, before he became a famous author, actually he was known for, he was sitting on the branch and cutting same branch itself without realizing that he will fall down and hurt himself. Fortunately and incidentally, the transition of Tamal from a business journalist to author is not that dramatic. It is more in sync. But I must say that book displays in abundant measures a journalist's ability to ask the right question and draw the right responses from the various characters which are dotting the book. Today when, and even in our panel discussion, the financial inclusion was a major topic of the discussion. So today when FI is on the top of agenda, not only in India but globally, I think evolution of Bandhan provides many valuable insight in this regard. I think first and foremost it brings out the point very strongly that poor are very much credit worthy. But within book you will find a mention, an abundant caution that unloading sack full of money on credit-starved poor can't help in long run. Providing only optimum capital at realistic rate of interest and tight monitoring, these are critical. And somewhere in the jest, I think author has reminded of the old days when the flagship government program of IRDP was later on, once it had progressed few years. So actually it was meant to be integrated rural development program, that was the IRDP, but somewhere in the journey it was converted into Inko Rin Dena Padega. This is how the IRDP was converted. But I find that in the book you get very well argued and logically detailed insight and such, like women are a better credit risk, perils of the over-indebtedness, art of collection, and there are many very interesting stories about it. Importance of processes, importance of cost control, organizational discipline, eye for details, and of course, traits of a very benevolent dictator. All those things are, I think, coming out quite clearly in this book. But also a very clear and a strong message comes through that a strong team is essential for any entrepreneurial efforts to succeed. It brings the complementary skills and the expertise and experience. It also brings out point very strongly that I think best form of leadership is to lead by example. I know I have been assigned a very limited time, but I think I can't resist myself from quoting some of the very interesting episodes which are described in the book, and which I am sure would bring the interest in everyone to go through them. There is one Mr. Ronti, I mean to say, it is mentioned when Mr. Ronti, who was responsible for bringing the IT solution in Bandhan, has mentioned, I don't know if he's sitting here because I have only read the names. He said that in those days it was very difficult to buy anything new and get the permission to buy anything new in Bandhan Bank. So he says that the most important thing I learned in Bandhan was that before asking for anything, tries to best utilize whatever you have. And that I realized later was one of the key factors behind its success. The book also gives how the employees were trained to deal with the political and the local dadas and the money lenders. Is almost also a case study is on how to keep the trade unions at bay in any organization. I was really touched by I mentioned about the art of collection, and it is mentioned that the employees are taught that when you go to recover the money, don't talk about our recovery at all. Talk about anything else, everything under the sun, but the recovery. And there is a story of one Halima Begum who was avoiding to repay the bank's loan. The recovery officer went to her home and said from morning to evening, and lady realizing that these are the recovery efforts, she didn't turn up. But two young daughters, her two young daughters, they were at home, they were starving. So this gentleman from the bank took them out for the lunch, fed them, and brought them back and left at home. And in the midnight, Halima Begum knocks at the door of the concerned officer and repays the installment which were due. I think these are very unique kind of experience. There is another story of a lady whose baby died, but she still came to repay the loan, saying that this is my responsibility, this must go together. The most interesting thing I found was the instruction manual, detailed instruction manual, and which I learned from the book was authored by Mr. Ghosh himself, first in 2003, then revised in 2007, and then in I think 2010, starting with first few handwritten Xerox copies stapled, and I think in greater details it provides furniture, size, cost, how many staplers, how many staple pin, how many pin holders, and so much so how many refill an employee can obtain in a month. At least in the beginning days, even those were prescribed in greater detail. I think it links back to the cost control which I was talking about. So also the guest room, towel in the guest room, the frequency of washing it, all those things are very meticulously detailed. Point comes, I think, in the beginning of an organization, all these kind of abundant precautions are very, very important. I use the word benevolent dictator, but it doesn't mean that there was no empathy for the employees or the engagement. So there is also a story of Mr. Madhu, 40 plus and bachelor. And every year he comes to the chairman and he is told that if you want a raise, get married. Of course, whether he has made up his mind till now, I don't know. But that story is there. There is also a story of one Mr. Kundu, who was very averse to taking any leave in his career, and even for marriage he took only 3 days leave. Also turned up for the duty the day his father expired. So I think very inspiring story. Of course, as usual, Bandhan had its fair share of administrative action. So they had also seen a raid on the Bandhan headquarters as well as at the residence of Mr. Ghosh, suspecting that they are the chit fund company and not realizing that rather than taking money, they are lending the money. Tamal had been, as I said, he elicits the right stories. So there are some very hilarious episodes which are mentioned in the book. Bandhan was essentially maintaining the manual records, and for the first time when the branches moved to computer, and they used to sometimes get the telephonic directions from the head office. So when someone from the head office said they were encountering some problem on the monitor, so when head office gave the advice, move the move the mouse. So someone lifted the mouse in the air, move the mouse. At some other time, the instructions came, please clean the screen. So someone took a wet cloth and started cleaning the monitor screen. So I think these are the kind of experiences people get in the initial period. Finally, when I think the RBI decided to give in principle approval, and again, an interesting story, Mr. Ghosh probably decided at that point of time that migration from microfinance to bank also requires some migration in outfit and appearance. So he instructed his employees that time has come now for them to be little more formal and also get a haircut. That was the advice which was given in a meeting on 23rd August 2015. And one of the lady executive, I think she cubed back that I'll be very happy to go to parlor provided I get time for that, sir. So that was also there. I think I'll quickly, but there are some Tamal inputs. I would say hindsight is, of course, a very powerful and beautiful thing. So difficult to make a judgment. But he made one statement that probably the move by RBI in the year 2006 to stop peerless from accepting deposit was probably one of the reasons that so many unregulated entities, particularly in West Bengal and in Northeast, got into the business of collecting unregulated deposit. So maybe something for us to think. Anyway, as I said, is a much broader story than the story of Mr. Ghosh or Mr. Bandhan, because of the total 330 pages of the books, I think 236 pages are taken by Mr. Ghosh and Bandhan, and then remaining pages are also devoted to couple of other large microfinance institution and evaluation of microfinance in India. I would sum up by telling that probably is the story of David who took on the Goliath by sheer determination and maybe adopting the unconventional approaches. I once again compliment Tamal. I'm sure he must be already now heavy with the pregnancy of next project, and next book must be already in the offing. Since he is semi-attached to Bandhan Bank, the key question is that how much maternity leave now Mr. Ghosh would be prepared to give to him, going by his manual of instructions. So I think that is for them to settle between each other. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me here. All the best, and I urge all the people, I think is a book you must live through, and you will draw a lot of valuable lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mundra. I'll now request Mr. Sinha to give the final address.
Good evening, everybody. I have a confession to make. Unlike Uday, I must confess that I didn't know of Bandhan. I didn't know of Mr. Ghosh. And it was only about 2 years back when I heard the news about his getting an in-principle approval from the Reserve Bank of India that my curiosity arose, and I tried to find more and more about him. And 1 year later, I came to know when Tamal one day told me that he is taking leave from his current job and he is going to help Bandhan Bank set up its business. Friends, Tamal is a great storyteller. And the way he has written this book, one is transposed to the situation which he is describing. Mr. Mundra has talked about a few situations. I was particularly amused to read that in the early parts of his career, Mr. Ghosh, who used to get paid maybe about 100 rupees for a talk that he used to deliver, there were occasions when the audience could not provide even those 100 rupees, and so he was given a bottle of mustard oil. I don't know what he did with all those bottles of mustard oil that he got. There are several examples of the deliberations in the board meeting, the deliberations in the strategy sessions, and the way they have been described, you actually feel that you are present in that particular meeting. And one example which comes to my mind, that in one of his board meetings, one of his board members mentioned about Dr. Einstein losing his train ticket and trying very desperately to find where it is, and the ticket examiner trying to comfort him that, don't worry, we know you must have bought the tickets. And Dr. Einstein tells him that, look, it's not about my buying ticket or not buying ticket. I want to know where am I going. I want to know my destination. And they drew a conclusion from that they have to be always ask themselves where they are going, where the bank is going, where the organization is going. The way this storytelling has happened, I feel, and I will endorse what Mr. Mundra said, that it is impossible to put down this book once you pick it up. But more than the storytelling and more than the story about Bandhan Bank, I think this is a story about the whole history, at least 200 years of history that I could think of or I could find out in the book, about how rural indebtedness has progressed in this country, how rural distress has been handled in this country. In the early part of my job, when I started my working life, I used to work in very small districts. And one of the first things we used to know, or we were told by our seniors, was that if somebody is not making any payments to you for any government dues, try and ensure that it is covered under a Public Demand Recovery Act as an area of land revenue. And the moment you put it as an area of land revenue, you have got a power to issue a certificate. And a certificate issued by a revenue officer is good enough. You can go and attach his property and all that. Frankly, I had not found the answer that where these powers came or what was the history behind it. Tamal has mentioned, and I was quite illuminated by that knowledge, that it was in 1830s that the British decided for the first time that the land revenue will be collected not in kind but in cash. And when they started collecting in cash, he has rightly inferred that that is the time when the indebtedness index started going up. That is the time when money lending in a usurious way started going up in this country. So this book gives you a lot of insight about what has happened in our country and also in other parts of the world. For example, he has taken us to the experience in Mexico and the experience in Indonesia. This book has tracked the entire development in the last, at least in the post-independence India, about how to solve the problems of rural credit. He has talked about the movements on the cooperative field, how the cooperative credit societies and cooperative banks came up, what were the problems, how they were found to be less ready for the tasks for which they were created, the nationalization of banks, the provision for priority sector lending, IRDP, and a whole lot of other things. For example, regional rural banks. I wish, Tamal, that there was some more analysis on why the regional rural bank experiment could not be so successful as it was expected to be. I also endorse his views when he raises a question mark about the local area banks. He has rightly pointed out that Reserve Bank of India did a wonderful thing by starting the local area banks. But Mr. Mundra, I seek your permission to make a comment here that it appears to me that almost for 2 decades, the Reserve Bank had some internal hesitation about giving a lot of support that the local area banks did. However, with the current decision of the small finance banks that Reserve Bank has allowed, I have, for example, lot of faith that a section of the credit need, a section of the banking needs in the country, which was not happening in the past, Reserve Bank, this initiative and giving license to 8 banks in that regard is perhaps going to be helpful. The whole question of rural and urban poor and how their credit needs can be met or how their finance needs can be met are questions on which we can draw examples from various parts of the world. All over the world, through all the times, people have been experimenting about how to provide finance, how to provide how to provide solution to the problems which the poor have. And I think nobody has been able to find a solution so far. And perhaps one of the things is that, as it was mentioned earlier, we have to go for a differentiated model. I think the experiment of the small finance banks, the experiment of allowing a bank like Bandhan Bank to come up, which at least has decided to, at least in the initial years, that they will not go towards commercial banking and they will follow a particular model is very important. Another important thing which impressed me a lot about this bank is, and the writer could have merely decided not to deal with it because it was not directly connected with the subject, was he has given examples of 2 failed initiatives of how microfinance institutions, the 2 institutions have failed, and what is the type of mistake that they have created. So in the end, I would like to say that if we are looking at finding a solution to the problems of the poor, both rural and urban, the motto which this bank has given, that motto is perhaps the right model to go, and that is, Aapka Vikas or Sabka Saath. No, I think I got it wrong. Yes.
Aapka bhala, sabki bhala.
Sabki bhalai. Aapka bhala, sabki bhalai. I think that is the model we need to go through. Thank you all for listening to me and for inviting me.
Thank you, Shri Sinha, for your lovely closing remarks. We have time for probably 1 or maybe 2 questions from the audience before we close today's session. We have mics roaming around here. Gentleman here in the blue shirt on the 5th row. Mic here, please.
Ghosh, actually, not about the book, but about comment that you made about, the 80% of people, especially in rural areas, actually prefer a branch banking rather than a digital banking. I mean, it seems quite interesting comment, especially in the new world that we are living in, and it's very interesting. So I just thought, do you see that changing going forward?
No, it will be going for the future if we can be rightly educate this people. So because there is a people many times have been cheated, so they are not feeling the comfort on that to other things is this. So they would like to see it the physically this branch is there, my money have been deposited, so got the receipt. So they are very happy to on that. But it will be like to more educate the people, hand holding sometimes will begin, and then gradually it will come to this good comfort in that.
I guess we'll bring the session to an end now. Thank you for being a very patient audience, and a big round of applause for all our panelists and speakers. We'll also like to present a few mementos to all our panelists and speakers, please. Lohit, you also want to?
Right, on behalf of Penguin Random House, I'd like to thank our distinguished panel. That was a very insightful and engaging conversation. This is a very important book for us, and we are very excited to publish it. I would also like to thank LeapVault and Four Seasons Private Residencies for organizing this wonderful event. Copies of the book are available at the venue, and the author's right here, so you can get the copies signed if you'd like. We will serve some wine, and do join us after this, after we present the mementos. Thank you.